Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's podcast is kind of special. So this is the 365th episode, I guess, of podcasts that we've done, and that marks a whole year of podcasts. So it actually has been, for me, a year plus 10 days. So I did have kind of like 10 little mishaps and goof ups along the year. So this is actually a year and 10-day anniversary, but it's a year of actual podcasts. So in the last year, I had a goal. When I started, I actually didn't think about doing it every single day. I just kind of started, and I'll explain why here in a second. And then it just kind of became something that felt comfortable and soothing to do every day. And then it led into the goal of, well, I wonder if I can make one every day. So I noticed, like, if I did Monday through Friday but took weekends off, the kind of retention rate would kind of die off. So I figured, out of sight, out of mind. If people kind of didn't think about the podcast on Saturday and Sunday, they might not be as likely to come back to it on Monday. So I was like, well, I'll just do it every day since I enjoyed it and I liked it. And then it just kind of grew from there. So in the year, in 10 days, I was able to make a year's worth of podcasts. So this is our kind of 1 year anniversary. And I figured I'd tell a little bit of the story about why the podcast started and give some insight into what the podcast has done for me and how others might be able to learn from the lesson that I've experienced. So when I first started the podcast, I actually started it due to a period of depression for myself. So I was going through a kind of a tough moment in life, and I was really struggling with the feeling of like self-worth and value. Like, what was I worth to anybody or to the world? And that, looking back at it now, is maybe an overblown type feeling. Like, there was definitely value, there was definitely worth I had. To my loved ones, I would have been worth something, keeping around, to my friends, to my clients, and to the gym. But it was a real struggle at that time to kind of feel what was my place in life, what was my purpose, what was something I could give to the world that wasn't necessarily unique to me in the sense of making me feel special, but unique to me in the sense that it spoke to me as what I was here for. And I had been a guest on a podcast about a month or so before kind of the hard time. And I remembered at the darkest time how fun that podcast felt, how good it felt to kind of have the opportunity to share knowledge with a large population of people. So I get to share knowledge every day with people. So, I have clients throughout the week. So I might train, now like 25 to 30 hours a week. When I first started the gym, I was training around 50. But it'd be 25, 30 hours a week of like in-person clients. I'd have some online clients I'd work with. Social media posts on Instagram and Facebook, you would see like how many people would like the posts. So it gave me the idea of I was getting feedback and seeing that I had, influence, or I had effect in people's lives. And at the time, that was good and it felt good. But I recognized through a podcast, I was able to affect even more people. And it felt like something so easy to do was to just talk about what I was passionate about. So the host of that podcast gave me really good feedback and said they enjoyed the time that we did the podcast together. And it made me feel like maybe this was something that I could do. So it was a way that I could kind of look outside of myself and focus on helping others. So it was something that, even though it was focused on others, it was actually a selfish act. So it was something that I felt like it gave me value. It gave me worth. So it's something I enjoyed. It made me feel happy. It allowed me to reach more people, and by reaching more people, it made me feel like I had more worth. So that's kind of why I started the podcast. It was actually not necessarily out of the happiest moment of my life. So I wish it was, but it was actually out of a really crappy, horrible moment of my life that something so great actually came from it. So going through that period of depression and kind of anxiety in my life, it was actually a huge, huge turning point for me. So I dove deeper into religion. So I am a Christian, and I kind of leaned harder on God and started listening to more podcasts from different, preachers, and listening to different sermon topics, and finding ways to mentally navigate my way through what I was dealing with. I also dove deeper into like knowledge, just reading more books. So I do audiobooks on audible.com. So I have the Audible app on my phone, so I just listen to books in the morning or while I'm working out. And I started listening to a lot of things about like self-worth, self-value, kind of like internal mental health. So how I was talking to myself, I had to watch my language and make sure I was talking in a positive manner. I tried to take better control over my life and finding ways that I could do things more efficiently, more effective. I could bring forth more value out of myself. So I kind of dove deeper into how to provide greater value to others. And in that process, I found out how to create greater value in myself. So going through the pains of my own also helped me just feel more sensitive to other people's pains. And it was a really good kind of humanizing aspect for me in the sense that, I'd always try to be polite and be kind to people, but at the same time, I was kind of a tough SOB in a sense to where if you said you wanted something, I told you how to do it, this is what you got to do. And there was very little leeway or understanding on my part. So it definitely helped kind of round off my edges, so to speak, in a good way. So it's interesting now for me a year later to look back and see how that the darkest moment of my life brought forth what I feel is actually the brightest time of my life. So I feel right now that in business and in personal life, I am the best I've ever been. So I'm shining the brightest into the world, if that makes sense. And recognizing that today's brightness was only possible through yesterday's darkness, through yesterday's pains. So that year ago, when it was the worst moment of my life, it allowed me to now have what I have today is the best moments of my life. So I truly believe that going through all things, even negative ones, can bring forth positives. It absolutely does not mean that after a negative, things are always going to be better. Better sometimes, unfortunately, isn't an option. So sometimes something really bad happens and you don't ever get to reclaim what things were before then. But there are chances, there are opportunities to still bring forth good things in the pain, if that makes sense. Not better things sometimes, but just good things. So if you lost somebody you loved, so maybe somebody you loved that was really close to you dies and they pass away. That is one of the darkest things you can ever experience. And I luckily have not had a parent or a sibling pass away, so I have yet to feel the deepest of those pains. But it is something that you can see in others. It's absolutely heartbreaking. But through that pain, it can bring forth a new appreciation for life. So the person who survived, who's still alive, can have a new passion towards life, a new appreciation of the moments they're in, and they can try to actually live a better life that if it weren't for the loss of the other person, they may have never really kind of truly pursued their best life. It doesn't mean that, that lost person isn't missed. Absolutely, they're still missed. And I'm certain the person still alive would trade anything they have to bring that person back. But unfortunately, that isn't an option for us. So using that motivation, using that hurt of losing them can bring forth the positive of trying to find the best life that you have while you're still alive. So again, it's not better outcome, but it does bring something positive out of the darkness. So somebody loses a marriage maybe, and through that pain, it brings forth a chance for personal growth. So they get to kind of look through and see what their mistakes of the relationship were, and they can work to improve those. And it can bring forth a kind of a better understanding also of what you would want in a life partner. So you can better define where your boundaries are of how you want others to treat you. And you can kind of learn how to better treat others yourself. So losing a marriage can sometimes not only bring forth a betterment of yourself, it can bring forth a betterment of what you would expect someone else to bring into the relationship. So sometimes we lose a marriage through divorce, sometimes people lose a marriage through a spouse passing away. And again, things might not be quote unquote better afterwards, but there is a chance for some positive to come out of it. And like I said, in the sense of trying to just figure out how you can be a better person, how you can match better with somebody, or how you can find somebody who better matches with you. There is something to find, like a light or a positive out of it, out of that darkness. So, in all moments of darkness, unfortunately, when you're in it, all you can see is darkness. So it's kind of like walking into like a dark tunnel. So you're walking from the light into the dark. And the fear, the anxiety, the unknown of that moment grows. And then as you walk into the tunnel, the light behind you fades and fades and fades. And eventually you're left pitch black, total darkness. That's all you can see. But if you keep walking, if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, even if you don't have a clue what you're doing is right, just keep moving. If you keep moving, eventually you will begin to see a glimmer of light, a glimmer of hope. That down that tunnel, on the other end, there is a chance for light. So you don't know necessarily what's always waiting on the other end of that tunnel. And like I said, it might not always be a better than what the light you were at before, but there is still some light there. So it's not darkness forever. Eventually there will be light. Eventually you'll find it, and you'll have the opportunity to make the best of whatever it is. So when I was in my darkest moment, people would give me the words of advice of it won't always feel like this, or this won't last forever. And to be honest, when I was in my darkest moment, I couldn't think anything past like the few seconds I was literally in. So if somebody said, things will be better tomorrow, I couldn't even deal with today. So tomorrow seemed like a really far off thought, and it wasn't really something that it was so distant from where I was mentally that it almost didn't even feel helpful. So I believed what they said. I believed kind of the words that they were saying, and I understood that, yeah, it's probably true, but at that time I wondered if it would come true for me. Would I truly be able to survive this? Would there really be something on the other side for me? And day by day, it still hurt. Day by day, I still struggled. But slowly, I struggled less. And it hurt a bit less. There were moments where the struggle and the hurt actually flared up to the greatest they'd ever been. But those momentary flares became fewer and fewer. So eventually, I kind of like stumbled my way back into the light. So I went from the darkest moment of my life. I tried to keep moving, taking whatever advice I could. And eventually it led to now what is kind of my brightest, happiest moment of life. And it absolutely was not easy. It took everything I had. It was absolutely the worst moment of my life. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And if anybody now is in darkness and they're listening to this, or if they're about to face darkness and they're listening to this, the two things I would have to say for words of wisdom is keep moving. Even if you have to crawl, even if you have no clue what you're doing is the right thing to do, just move. Move, move, move. Do anything. Anything that you can do. Some days you might lay in bed all day, depressed, not eat, cry. But crying itself might be a thing of moving forward, letting the pain go. Sometimes we just need to do whatever we can do in that moment to relieve the pain, to distract ourselves. But we have to keep trying things, keep doing things. You just have to keep moving. And the second tip is to lean on others. You absolutely do not have to do it alone. And often, leaning on others when we don't have strength, we can rely on their strength. And that's what will help us push us through. So you can survive whatever you're going through. you can make it through it and get onto the other side. There will be happiness again. So the world may be forever changed. It might never go back to the way it was. It might never be quote unquote perfect, but there still is opportunity for happiness. There still is opportunity for a meaningful life, to have some value in the moments you're in. So don't give up. Keep moving, even if you don't know what you're doing. Just move. And lean on others. You don't have to go it alone. So reach out, ask for help. Rely on others' strength when you don't have strength of your own. Okay? So that is something that I feel is the summary of what this first year of the podcast have been for me. So I hope that I was able to project happiness and positivity to others even when I was not feeling that in my own life. And I truly appreciate everyone who's listened to this podcast, because through the data, in the listener data, when you can see on my end how many people are listening and where they're listening from, that was something that truly motivated me every single day to make these podcasts, which motivated me to get up every day, which motivated me to get back to doing what I loved, gave me purpose again in my life, gave me value again in my life. So every single download that anyone has ever had of this podcast, you've helped to save my life. I know that sounds really corny, and it might sound overblown, but it isn't. So that was truly the darkest moment of my life when I started this podcast. And it has now turned into something that I'm truly excited to do every day. So I've done a podcast, like I said, for pretty much every day for the last year, and it hasn't gotten old yet. It hasn't felt like work yet. It hasn't felt like a burden. This is something I truly enjoy, and I pray every day that I say something that helps somebody. So this really isn't about me. It's about me sharing the gifts that I've been given by others. So I've had tons of people pour into my life, and I hope that I can just give a fraction of that to everybody else. So I've been so blessed and so lucky to have amazing people in my life, and I hope I'm doing them a service by passing on the gifts that they've given to me through something like this podcast, and through the people I train every day, through the members I help every day or talk with every day, even through just kind of smiling at a grocery clerk, smiling at the guy or girl at the gas station, just trying to give some kind of happiness into the world that others had given into my life. So I truly, truly, truly appreciate everybody who's listened to this podcast, and it's meant more to me than I'll ever be able to explain. And I hope that I've been able to give back some value in return. I truly do. And for anybody who's struggling in their life, I'll tell you firsthand from mine is that I had the hardest moment in my life, and it did pass as long as I kept moving forward, as long as I leaned on others and used their strengths when I didn't have some of my own. Those are the two big things that helped me. So no man is an island. You do have to ask for help from time to time. So I had to have that kind of ego check for myself and recognize that I was better when I accepted the strengths of others to fill my gaps. So even if I could do it alone, it's not the best way to do it. It's not going to bring forth your best. So lean on others, use their help. It's okay, and it's actually beneficial to do. And then just keep moving forward. So you will eventually get to something on the other side. And like I said, it might not be better, but at least there'll be some hope, there'll be some happiness there. So no matter how dark things are for you, just keep moving and ask others for help. Cool. Okay. So don't know if that was necessarily the most positive message for a 1-year anniversary, but it's kind of what has meant the most to me in the last year. So thank you to everybody who's listening, and I truly hope that there's value in these podcasts for you, and I hope that I've been able to bring happiness into your life as you've brought into mine. Cool. Okay. Thank you. So if you like this podcast, please share it with family and friends. The more people we help, the happier the world will be. And if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Brutal Iron Gym. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. The podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. And you can tell us at our email, brutalironGym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.